Welcome to episode 44 of the Champagne Comedy Podcast, where we talk about the best Australian comedy show from the 90s ever made, Frontline, and other D-Generation comedy tidbits. My name is Matt, and joining this podcast today is Alison, Daniel, Kim, and Tony.
Hello.
Well, we're minus Prue, but we do have Tony, so that's good enough.
A bad trade-off. You were ripped off bad.
Not feedback, just more or less news and what's been going on and so forth. What we would usually publish on champagnecomedy.com when it decides to work. Nudge, nudge, we get Kim.
Yep.
So,
It's back online
so
now.
if the site ever goes down or there's a delay in posts or articles or whatever, we blame the server. Simple
It's
as
under
that.
new management.
Yep.
Yeah, constantly. So even though the last thing...
Under constant management.
Yeah, constant
Or
management.
mismanagement.
But I don't know if you've been watching any free-to-air TV of late, and it's always a questionable statement. If you saw Tony Martin on the 100 with Andy Lee during the week as well, he was on there with Hamish Blake and Sophie Monk. And the funny thing is, right now, this is the dedication that we have to this podcast. At the time that this episode is currently recording, Tony is on stage. Now, I'm based in Sydney, Kim's based in Sydney, and Tony Martin's actually performing with Bob Franklin on stage in Hornsby, roughly an hour away from where we are right now.
Yep. It's only about an hour away. Well, I'm kind of in the middle of where he was going to go on in Wollongong. And
Same here. So there we go. That's commitment. But yeah, he was on the 100 with Andy Lee, and here's a snippet.
What percent of the 100 have been arrested? Just 1%, Tony.
Well, I just went from my own life, and I do obviously mix in quite nerdish circles, but the only person I know who was ever arrested is a bloke who was selling illegal copies of the first series of Underbelly out of the boot of his car at the pub car park.
That was a thing for a while, wasn't it?
That was probably the funniest bit.
The amazing thing, spoiler alert, is that Tony won the episode.
Yeah. And
I haven't had a chance to catch it
That's
yet.
very out of character for Tony.
But very much in character for the 100, which is a show I still can't quite figure out what the point is, apart from a giant wall of faces.
it's like an extended version of, the beginning of Family Feud, where we surveyed the audience and then they've just expanded on that.
Yeah, it's like, we surveyed 100 people and here they are.
Yeah, we always wondered who they were. They were just a wall of people all these years.
Yeah.
It's just sort of, every time I tune in, it's like there's just a wall of people watching them, and it's just kind of creepy and dystopian, and it's like, yeah, I'm not laughing at this. Goodbye.
I think we've cracked it. I think we've cracked why that show is successful because of that. So it's the Family Feud before it becomes feud.
Much as the Fast and the Furious movies have taught us, it's all about family.
Another appearance was Mick Malloy, and that was with the Russell Gilbert Show, or the Best of Russell Gilbert Show, that was on Channel 7, originally broadcast on Channel 9 all those years ago. So it was 2 episodes, as we mentioned previously. It was a clip show of 7 episodes of the Russell Gilbert Show, and Mick being friends with Russell Gilbert. This is a snippet from the 1997 pilot episode, really.
Hi, and welcome to The Ordinary, the program that looks at supernatural encounters, mysterious occurrences, and unexplained phenomena. Funny man Mick Malloy tells of his frightening brush with fate.
Well, I was going on holiday with 2 of my mates to Bali, and we got to the airport and we checked our luggage in, and just as we were about to get on the plane, I had this very strong feeling, this premonition that something was going to go horribly wrong, and I tried to talk them into not getting on the plane, but, well, they did.
And they died in a plane crash?
No, they're in Bali having a great time. Sent me a postcard.
I did watch that. There were quite a lot of young comedians in there. A very young Marty Sheargold featured in a couple of sketches as well. Yeah, blast from the past, that one.
Mike Myers, the American actor, was in
A Canadian.
Canadian, yes, my mistake.
Let's not have the US own him. It's like us in Kiwis.
It's far enough. If you look from my house they're far enough away that it's one and the same.
Pedantry. No, it's fine.
I'm sorry.
I agree. He is Canadian. I mean, his recent Netflix series very much proves his Canadian chops, I think.
He was over here in his status as an honorary American.
Well saved.
But he was actually out in Australia to promote, this is how dated the show is, Austin Powers.
Well, yeah, because the first one notoriously didn't do well in cinemas, and it took kind of home video for it to be a success.
The only thing I just wanted to mention really quickly is I noticed that on the Working Dog Productions YouTube channel, they had a clip from The Late Show with Tim Watson doing the AFL, the grooming school for AFL footballers. And I did notice that it wasn't the same little excerpt that comes from the best of.
Yes.
So, there was a bit that you wouldn't have seen from the best of. So it does genuinely look like they've digitized the tapes and they're going through it, pushing aside all the questionable news-based content probably. And hopefully we might see a bit of stuff that's not just on the best ofs. Fingers crossed.
I will say that when they did post up the Oz Brothers, they did remove out the blooper of Neville saying border. So
that's right. Yeah, one of them cracking a bit.
Yeah, instead of saying booty, he goes border. Stick to the script, Neville.
So I think they are still relying on the best ofs for some stuff, but not all of it. So some really promising stuff. I'm hoping that maybe later on they might move on to some of the old hours and hours of the panel. There must be some really interesting stuff that we can watch that's not reliant on one of the guests passing away in order for us to see it on their YouTube channel.
Good point.
Oh, Jesus!
It's Daniel Genie's program guide.
All right, so this isn't so much the program guide, but this is looking in the previous Thursday's edition of the Green Guide. Specifically, the letters page has caught my interest for a couple of reasons. First of all, there's this letter about a similar comedy program that's on TV. It's headlined, Full Frontal Makes Homework Inviting. Innocently flicking channels, coming across Channel 7's Full Frontal and dutifully watching some Australian comedy was a big mistake. I have never witnessed such a poor array of comedy sketches in my life, and as the show dragged on even more, falling asleep seemed inevitable. Not able to raise one smile, I turned the television off in disgust. The D-Generation's Late Show was the only Australian comedy that had me in stitches every week, and now it is gone. When we must turn to American and English comedies for a good laugh, it makes you realise the poor state that the Australian television comedy scene is in. Even watching the commercial for Hey Dad makes 5 hours of homework look inviting, and that's a scary thought. And that's from Greta McMahon, age 16, Essendon. So a little bit of praise for us and a little bit of a boost sucks for Full Frontal. Although, mind you, if you were to replace Full Frontal with We Interrupt This Broadcast and commercial for Hey Dad with commercial for Best of the Russell Gilbert Show, it could still apply today, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, I was in Year 12 when Frontline was on, and I kind of agree. Nothing replaced the Late Show. I was still waiting. I was still hanging out for it. Full Frontal, I mean, had its moments, but it just didn't compare to the original, the best.
But that was really...
I think the only thing worth watching Full Frontal for was when McAuliffe came on, and you'd sit through an hour of Full Frontal and you'd maybe get 5 or 10 minutes of McAuliffe, and
that weird news parody in the middle.
Yeah. I that was the best bit. That and any other McAuliffe stuff.
But Full Frontal was such a the first season of Full Frontal was basically fast forward with a few new cast members, and then it sort of developed into the Sean McAuliffe and Eric Banner show. And then at one point, I think by season 5, they both left, and you were just left with this not very good show. That then wasn't it like Full Frontal? I want to say Full Frontal Unleashed or something, but there was some other version.
Oh no, there was totally Full Frontal, which when it moved to Channel 10.
So there was Fast Forward.
Yeah.
Oh dear, it's got the DVD.
Matt's holding up his DVDs.
Yeah, then there was Full Frontal.
I keep mine in the next room to avoid such a display.
Then there was the Eric Banner sketch show. And then, totally Full Frontal.
Yeah.
But in between, you had... Sorry, in between, You know, you also got Tonight Live with Steve Vizard. And you also had Bly. And also a compilation, Laugh Out Loud, which was a blend of Fast Forward and first season of Full Frontal.
Don't make me go into the next room and find my rejection letter from Artist Services where they knocked back my hilarious sketch ideas.
Oh, and also Big Girl's Blouse.
Oh, Big Girl's Blouse is good.
So did you have all those ready to discuss during this podcast, or are they just next to you constantly?
Little from column A, little from column B.
Are all of them framed and on the wall?
You have like one of those little shopping trolleys that you carry them with you everywhere you go in case it gets mentioned.
I have them. Yes, exactly. So whenever it gets mentioned, it's like, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. So, yeah. Apparently going for like $99 on eBay each. But you know,
it was a really weird time where they sort of decided that people with money would buy DVDs of Australian sketch comedy. So they put out everything. And then now, 15 years later, people are just like, what? Why? How did that get a release?
Yeah.
and how do I get a copy?
Anyway, sorry, Daniel. Totally hijacked that.
No, it's all right. All right, I feel like I might have opened up a few wounds there. Anyhow, that's not the only letter that I'm interested in from this recent issue of the Green Guide. There was a response to Ross Warnicki's criticism of Frontline. 2 weeks previously, he wrote that the first episode was more sitcom than satire, and that for Frontline to work, it must be more immediate, otherwise it might soon do an Alan Jones. He means that the show may get cancelled like his Channel 10 talk show, Alan Jones Live. But personally, I would like to think that it might be more about Mike Moore complaining about dust in the studio.
Oh, there's fucking dust in this studio. Yeah. If it was bloody John Laws or someone, the whole joint would be cleaned out. It's just fucking ridiculous.
Any excuse to play that. And if you want to hear more of that sort of stuff, if you do a search for the closet recordings of Alan Jones, you'll find a whole bunch of not for the airwaves stuff. Then 1 week previously, Ross Warnicki softened a little bit, writing that Frontline improved considerably. It still lacked immediacy, but the humour and the plot, checkbook journalism, were more sharply focused. The review after the first episode drew the ire of one letter writer. I won't say who wrote it, but I think you'll get who wrote it very quickly by the time I reach the end. It's headlined, "No Strangers to Warnicki's Boots." We are no strangers to criticism from Ross Warnicki. When we began production of The Late Show, he was one of the first to put the boots in. Let's rewind to some highlights from The Age. The only show on TV in which the toilet break is the highlight. Comedy hour that is 55 minutes too long. There is no variety, just skit after skit after skit. Our next TV offering was Frontline, and only 3 days after its debut, Mr. Warnicki has turned his incisive, critical attention to it. He begins by noting that Frontline comes from some of the team responsible, quote, for the late, great Late Show, unquote. Now, just a moment. This guy has spent 2 years bagging the Late Show. Since when did it become great? The fact that Ross Warnicki did not enjoy the first episode of Frontline is of no great concern to us. His past ability to pick winners hasn't exactly been a feature. But original Australian comedy is a rare commodity and clearly one worth nurturing. Surely the role of an intelligent critic would be to reserve judgment? We agree with Warnicki that Frontline is not topical. We made a deliberate attempt to avoid this feature. Frontline is about general principles and recurring themes, not topicality. It's like criticising the news for not having a band. The only conclusion we can draw is that Mr. Warnicki is either incompetent or he is deliberately chasing controversy to liven up an otherwise dud column. And that's from Santo Cilauro, Tom Gleisner, Jane Kennedy, and Rob Stitch, South Melbourne.
Nice.
I can't think of many times where people have replied directly to Ross Warnicki in the letters column about something that he's written in his weekly Rewind column. What do you think of their response? Because, I can understand on one hand why they did it, because they got a pretty bad review. But on the other hand, it kind of seems, to use internet parlance, they seem a bit butthurt, don't you think?
Yeah, it seems like they haven't really let it go since they first got criticised, and even in all the interviews that you read, they're still thinking about that initial bit of criticism, and they just haven't let it go. I think they felt like they wanted to finally have their say.
The traditional thing to say is that reviews aren't for the people who make something. Reviews are for the rest of the community. You don't get... I mean, there's nothing that they can get from a review that they don't already know. They've spent hours and hours and hours making the show. They're not going to suddenly read Ross Warneke and go, oh, no, we should have made it topical. Oh, what a mistake. It's like, it's aimed at, other people. And it's always... I mean, look, I am not a fan of Ross Warneke's work, but it's never a good look when someone who's had their work criticised fronts up the critic and says, look, you got it wrong. Because you make something and you put it out there, and then other people have their opinions. Your sort of duty of care finishes once you release it. You can't sort of go back and go, no, don't say it's bad, it's good. It's like, well, too late. You've got to make a good show, and then it's up to everyone else. So, I mean, I get where they're coming from. And I mean, it must be annoying to be in Melbourne and have, the paper of records television critic just hammering away at you for years at a time. But on the other hand, they get to make television shows and Ross Warneke gets to be Ross Warneke. So I think they've kind of come out in front.
Well, speaking of Warneke being Warneke, he does get a right of reply just after the letter. So this is his reply. In the style of the current affairs shows that it parodies, the Frontline team does not let the facts get in the way of a good grizzle. And then he outlines 4 points. Number 1. Yes, I criticised The Late Show when it began, but soon became a fan, describing it in these pages as ever-improving and very funny. Am I incompetent only when I criticise the DGen, or also when I praise them? Number 2. I selected every edition of the 1993 series as a viewing highlight in my Saturday Extra Guide to Weekend Viewing. There, and in Green Guide's Rewind last year, I referred to The Late Show as TV's funniest sketch comedy series, and at its best, absolutely hilarious. My support for the show was acknowledged in calls from the DGen's production office. Number 3. I always return to reassess programs that I have panned. If they have improved, I say so. While I did not enjoy the first edition of Frontline, I rushed to acknowledge last week that the second episode was a considerable improvement. And number 4. A critic's job is not to pick ratings winners. If it were, the job would be easier. Anyway, Frontline's ratings declined by about a quarter in its second week. Absolutely laying on the... you can almost read the tongue poking out from Warneke there.
Yeah, that is old-fashioned Warneke.
I mean, I think, a lot of the time this sort of stuff is really... You got to read between the lines, in a way. I mean, Melbourne and Australia's media landscape is not so big that they would not be aware of each other privately as well as publicly. And often, you sort of think, well, there might be more going on, perhaps.
Well, see, I'm wondering about that whole, my support for the show was acknowledged in calls from the DGen's production office. I do wonder what that's all about.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens. I'm sure they've, Warneke's done his end-of-year highlights and said The Late Show was great. And various TV publicists and that would ring him up and say, thank you for that.
Right.
I mean, that's sort of, there's a lot of back-scratching and, as shown on Frontline itself, the publicity departments are, working hard in the background to smooth the way for, the stories they want to tell. And so, I'm sure Warneke said nice things and they said thank you. And that's it. Whereas I'm guessing the actual members of the D generation were probably a bit more inclined to put him directly in the bin.
And Warneke is right. He did put the second series as a viewing highlight after completely blasting the first series. I don't know quite what happened between the first and the second series that changed his mind, but somehow he did.
Not to get out the Ouija board and read the mind of the late Mr. Warneke, but my assumption would be that he saw that The Late Show was a success and realised that as a TV critic saying a show that was popular was no good, eventually an editor will call him into the office and say, you are out of touch with public opinion on this one. Maybe rethink your views, or we will think about getting a critic who does reflect what people are watching. So, I mean, he may have changed his mind personally, but I suspect he realised that he couldn't spend 2 whole years slagging off a show that people liked.
Yeah, it does sound a bit, to quote Frontline, the art of gentle persuasion, quite perhaps. So, yeah, that was an interesting thing to spot in the Green Guide. So
Thanks,
I wonder what Warnicky might think of this episode that we're going to look at now.
Yes. Now, who wants to do the intro?
I will give it a go.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Ready?
So it's after the theme. Okay. After the theme. No news clips or anything with this because this time I got lazy.
So it's all on me. Hello, I'm Tony Morris, and this is Frontline Season 1, Episode 4, She's Got the Look, broadcast Monday, May 30, 1994.
Yay!
Don't clap that.
That's worth clapping.
You did it. Well done.
Hey.
Yeah, as we'll discover in this episode, it's very, very difficult
It
to
is.
do these things.
I had
you
to
did it
do
in one
this for
take.
community radio 30 years ago, and it was very difficult then.
Did you ever have to forward promote Roxette? Did you ever have to hit the post, hit the vocals?
I was doing community radio breakfast news. I had to put together in the next half hour, we look at Geelong's parking crisis and that kind of thing. So.
Geelong's parking crisis. Yes, it is still stuffed. Coming up next, Roxette. She's got the look.
They wouldn't let me do any of that stuff. That was why I signed up.
So the synopsis behind this episode is Brian hires an attractive sports star because A, he likes her, and B, he likes her. The team, especially Emma, their moral values come into play. So it's a fun time in the Frontline office. And we do open up to the sports star, Nikki Burke, doing a workout to Roxette. She's got the look.
In the script book, it says that she's in the gym, sweat strategically dripping down her boobs. This is written by grown men, I just want to remind you.
You know what? I read that in the script book, and I just remembered that when I was at university, I did a script writing course, and they told you specifically not to write that kind of language when you're doing a description of what's happening in the, in the script. I can't remember what that bit's called. So clearly I didn't do very well at script writing. But you're basically not allowed to use like slang words or like boobs or whatever. You have to say breaths.
Well, part of the thing with script writing is that on the one hand, there are all these rules. And on the other hand, whenever some horrible American person wields out their, script that they got $7 million for, it's like, and it breaks all the rules. Check out, I go into these page-long descriptions of an explosion. And you're just like, yeah, because you were mates with the producer and they let you do that stuff. So I'm guessing the Frontline script, considering they were writing it for themselves, they could kind of
chuck in a boob.
Boobs. Yeah, put in some
Wait,
boobs.
if that's the rule with script writing, what is it like when you're writing for porn?
You don't write for porn. What are you watching that people are writing?
There are no
It's
scripts.
like Playboy, you read it for the articles.
There's no rules in porn.
Yeah.
No.
So
Okay.
you're there for the plot about, the washing machine's broken down and the mechanics arrived and
That pool cleaning.
Oh.
Yeah.
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 Now you've just got me thinking about some sort of weird Rule 34 version of Colin Conacher.
We'll get to Conacher
34?
later.
We-
There's a lot of Conacher action later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the sweating of the...
Hardcore Conacher action.
Ew.
Thank you. I am going to use
There
that
is
as...
a market for that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm low on toner.
Oh, give me more toner. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Move on.
Insert the
Cut
colour cartridge.
Oh, God. What have I
Magenta
just
me.
said?
Magenta me.
X-ray action.
Oh no, a paper
Oh
jam.
no,
Sorry,
I've got a
that's-
cyan.
that's-
Anyhow, back
Just to get
back to Frontline. We basically see that they're looking to Brian's looking to hire Nikki based on her looks alone.
But she sounds too...
But the caveat, as you're about to say.
Yeah, sounds a bit too Joe Bailey.
Yes.
Oh, but I'm sure
they
Mick
can
will be
fix
knocking on
that.
the door there.
Well, they never fixed Joe Bailey, so how can they fix this woman?
Yeah, well, You know what the funny thing is? It's the bit afterwards where Mike mentions going on the Sale of the Century for the celeb special.
Yeah.
Celebrity Super Challenge.
Yeah.
Ryan, Sale of the Century having a celebrity super challenge on the 5th. I was just wondering...
No, not for you, Mike.
Really?
No, you got too much credit for a thing like that.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, that's a bit of a ribbing towards himself, isn't it?
Our first contestant began her career in radio, got involved with a bad crowd and ended up a fully fledged member of the D Generation. Please welcome Countdown's biggest fan, Jane Kennedy.
Howdy, Jane.
When Jane was on the comedy special.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's cross-network promotion.
Yeah, well, it's if Mike did go on it, he would be having the quote,
Papadum.
We also get the first sort of reservations about Nikki being hired from Mike, but Brian seems to soothe Mike's apprehension, saying that she'll be learning from pros like Mike.
I mean, this is one of the things I sort of feel watching it, that it doesn't sort of date Frontline, because they kind of explicitly put Mike up as kind of being this old-fashioned journo that's come up from the ABC and been poached. But it just, the whole thing through this episode, I just kept thinking, there's nobody on commercial television who would blink an eye once at the idea of hiring some good-looking person to be on. That's what you're hired for. There's no sort of, I can't believe we're getting good-looking people on television. Television, good-looking people. It's like, that's all it's there for. You don't sort of, the idea that, oh no, journalistic integrity. It's like, well, there are newspapers if you don't want to show your face.
So, after that, we have the girls talking about Melrose Place.
No hotter place.
Yeah.
I used to watch Melrose Place back in the day, and because we were so far behind, it was always gossip when you knew what was going on. So the fact that Dominica knew what was going on probably a year ago in America.
Was that accurate though, Kim?
Michael and Sydney.
No,
I can't remember.
There's two different sort of rumours about what happens in Melrose, because in the show it's that Michael and Sydney get married, but in the script it's that it's about what happens at Billy and Alison's wedding, and Kate asks, "Does she die?" So, yeah, I'm guessing what actually happened might be lost to the mist of time.
I would just guess it was probably when they got around to filming it, they had more accurate gossip to go with.
Yeah, they're probably both correct. We can Google it now. Just can't be bothered.
me either. Save that for the Melrose Place podcast.
With Nikki turning up at the office, Mike is a whole bunch of smitten. He is in deep smit. Everything's fine. It's like, yeah, Nikki's okay, but no journalistic integrity.
Yeah, I know. She turns up in the sports gear and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just a bit sweaty." Who turns up to their job interview kind of situation dressed like that? But anyway,
people kind of do now. Like the idea of wearing activewear as just clothes generally is kind of a thing now, but it definitely wasn't in 1994. So she's very decades ahead of her time.
The sort of move that you would expect from a character that would later on be revealed to be manipulative.
Yes.
Ah, yes.
I did kind of think, is the twist going to be that she's acting dumb, but she's really sort of a player, which I guess they kind of touch on, but yeah, no, I was just like, who comes to work dressed like that?
But Jeff is choosing what glasses to wear, and he does reveal his news.
Hey, Mike, I don't want to rock the boat.
What do you mean?
You don't know?
What?
You know my urban wildlife documentaries?
No.
They found a time slot.
What?
Farmer said 6:30 on a Sunday night.
Wow,
Farmer.
the general manager.
The
It's
general
on
manager.
then. It's on.
As good as.
Oh, because I saw that Tina Dalton thing on Deadly Australians.
Oh, that.
How easy is that?
Mike, it's been done.
But people want to know what's going on in their own backyards, not in northern Queensland.
Exactly. So I'm not rocking the boat.
Oh, no.
I'm
Well,
not
don't.
rocking the boat. No
It'll
way.
look good. It'll look good.
Now, that's just setting, something up further down. Subtle, I guess. It's a subtle little joke down the track.
Well, also a nice sort of subtlety here, and really you could probably put this over the whole episode, is the theme of not rocking the boat, really. In terms of some of the other, like the main Nikki Burke plot line.
Yeah.
But we might get to that one a bit later on.
Now, when you say it's setting something up further down the line, is it 20 years later when have you been paying attention starts on a 6:30 Sunday time slot.
No.
We really forget, don't we?
That's a long reach, but I'll pay that.
There's some serious psychic ability going on, if so.
Well, because I did think that, because I was like, oh wow, that was a dud time slot even then. But
hello, I'm Mike Moore. Welcome to Future Line.
Then we get Brian versus Jan, and the revelation that the network wants Mike to do Sale of the Century, but Brian doesn't, because he doesn't want the audience knowing that Mike isn't the intelligent, knowledgeable host he's sold as.
Well, that was an interesting bit that I was sort of, I don't know whether it was meant to double with Nikki's character or not, that they're both just good-looking airheads.
Yeah, possibly is. There's more of a focus on the whole female aspect in this episode, but then, yeah, it does bring it back to Mike's cognitive abilities and knowledge of capital cities.
And you know what it is? It is Conacher Watch.
Yay!
Yeah, Colin Conacher in the background answering Dom's phone as the team prep for the show. Did you notice that when they're all gathering together?
Yeah,
I did notice that, to be honest. I did notice in there. Is it 6 minutes and 5 seconds into the episode? If you're looking for it.
Yep. So the phone's ringing in the background, and then he picks it up after the second ring, and then hands off the phone to Dom. Great acting.
He's
great
in it.
acting.
He's in it quite a lot, actually, throughout this whole team meeting scene. Can I just point out another thing that I really enjoyed about the team meeting, and that is that Mike sort of joins the team meeting, but he brings his own chair, and it's one of those backless chairs.
Yes.
Do you remember those?
Yes.
And if you wanted to be a complete
ergonomic chairs.
Yeah, one of those sort of ergonomic chairs. And if you were a complete tosser in the 90s, you had one of these chairs because, oh, it's for my back, yeah? And obviously Mike Moore's got one. So that's nice. But also in this scene, there is a cut line. And it's in the script. So the team are brainstorming stories for Nikki, right? So they're saying, well, she's an athlete. We need to find a story that's going to suit her. And then Emma comes in sarcastically with something without many verbs. And then this is the cut line. Marty says, nah, we keep them for Mike. And it's a nice joke. And I thought, well, why would they cut that nice joke? And then I realised, they want to keep the scene moving. So that's why they've removed the joke. But yeah, anyway, there's a cut line for you.
So, in this production meeting, we find out that Marty's got a shonky lawyer story on the boil. And they decide to wrap things up and do a foot in the door, get footage of the shonky lawyer refusing to talk. They also drum up a sports story for Nikki, something to do with handicapped sports people, but no wheelchairs.
Yeah, no wheelchair. Yeah.
It turns out to be a deaf marathon swimmer, which is just an excuse to get Nikki in some togs, according to Brian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Emma does call out Brian for giving Nikki an on-camera role.
What if I told you that I wanted an on-air position?
Em?
Why? Why couldn't I be a reporter?
Well,
I'm good. You say that I'm good.
Hey, you're very, very good. You're the best as a producer.
Yeah, but I thought that this is...
Hey, you understand how it works.
Well, I thought I did, but all of a sudden this girl with no experience is suddenly on camera.
She's a high profile, very intelligent.
Oh, don't patronise me. I am not blind, yet she is very attractive. But, if I put on a suit, a bit of makeup, I write this shit. I'm more a journalist than she is. I'm more a bloody journalist than Brooke and Marty, and they get paid 5 times the salary I get paid, and I'm stuck here. I write all their questions, I do all their interviews, I set it all up for them, and what do I get? Nothing. And when I just want an opportunity, nothing. Is to get treated as a joke and become a reporter. You've got to be kidding.
You finished?
I think so.
That echoes still today. So that's true. I've witnessed
Amazing.
Stuff like that numerous times in the past. And yeah, it's pretty damn accurate.
The thing that struck me with it, I mean, I don't know, just from my experience in the shallow end of the media pool, is that really, really early on, like right from sort of day one when you get employed at, especially, well, I only know sort of print, and a little bit, people I know work at television, but there's a real divide between on-air talent and backroom people. It's like, basically, after the very early stages, you're on one path or another. If you're editorial and you want to be sort of more out the front, you have to go somewhere else. You basically have to leave where you work and try and get a job doing that somewhere else. They just don't the paths don't cross very often inside an organisation. If you're a producer, I know the ABC is different because the ABC is a huge organisation and they can shuffle people around. But for like TV shows and magazines and stuff, if you're an editor or you're a producer, you're not going to be put on front of the camera unless something's gone horribly wrong with the on-air talent, because the on-air talent are it's a different job. It's like literally a different thing. If you're putting together questions and doing the research and coming up with the stories, that's what people think journalism is. But the people who are presenting have a different set of skills, which are, looks, ability to read from, cue cards, able to walk and talk at the same time, which all sounds dismissive, but is actually a skill that is kind of difficult to do. And so there's sort of, while Emma's outburst makes lots of sense for the episode, I think in the real world, what she would do would be like, all right, I'm a producer on Frontline, time to try and get a hosting job on radio or somewhere else, and then come back to Frontline going, I've got experience now as well as being a producer, which is a boring, pedantic point that adds nothing to the episode, and is just me sitting there going, is that how it would really work? I'm not sure.
It doesn't really happen as much now because of the technology and so much media accessibility now. But whole thing with my experience anyway, radio would be if I was lucky to avoid this, but I saw people like say. Uni students or whatever end up being street teamers or casuals working in the newsroom and so forth, and they want to take the next step up, and then they go, oh, you got to go regional, so you got to go out to the countryside, work in a smaller regional radio station, or they are trying to do some stuff in one area, but if they want to be on TV, they go out to a regional TV station like SCTV or whatever it is called, and then cut their teeth in there to do the local sports thing or local, cat in a tree type thing. And then they eventually come back and have that experience. And then usually it's, if they come back, oh yeah, we can give you this role. And then they realize that they don't last too long, and then they move on. They go, oh, you know what, this was not worth it. Or they're lucky and they go further up because they have a connection with one of the main shows. So, and the chemistry works well, and they go, cool, the big general manager from the metro station heard you or whatever, and bam. Yeah, it can vary. But sometimes it's luck of the draw. Sometimes it's A, it's not worth it, and B, I can do better.
One of the guys I went to journalism school with, he got poached, basically, I think it might have been Mildura Television, one of the regional stations in Australia, came to the school and they were looking for someone, and this guy was put up for it. And he went out there and did television reporting and was like on camera. And eventually he was the host of Family Feud for a while. And then
right.
And then kind of went off into production and runs a very successful production company and all that sort of thing. But that was like a very different career path to everybody else. If he hadn't got that kind of come onto television thing, he wouldn't have gone down there. And there was no way for the rest of us to do that without sort of having that initial kind of leap. But I mean, I was just thinking watching this, a friend of mine, and I'll keep the details vague because otherwise it'd be a bit too specific, but recently got a job on a current affairs style show. And this friend of mine has done on-camera work. He's fronted television shows, a couple of television shows, but he was hired as a producer on this particular show. And yeah, there was sort of never anything that he would be going on camera on the show. They had there was the on-camera talent, and then there was the guys that he worked with that were putting together the stories. But apart from, maybe making a cameo here or there, you just didn't sort of go from one job to the other. They were very sort of, you were the backroom guys and your job finished at 6:30 when the show went to air, whereas the on-air talent, that was kind of when their job started. That was when they would be presenting things. And it seemed to be a fairly firm divide. They weren't nobody was there going, why can't I get on camera? Because it's like, well, because you don't look like this former sportsman who is on camera, or you don't look like, this network personality who's been around for 15 years and is now on camera on this show. You look like a regular person. So we'll keep you in the back room, thanks.
There's also another aspect to this that we get in the next scene when Emma is in the ladies' toilets with Brooke. And Brooke kind of gives her some advice, this is the way it is for women, If you want to be on television as a woman, you just have to be good looking. That's kind of it. You have to be good looking, you have to be able to speak well. That's it. And so you kind of get that alternative point of view, beyond, what you're saying about the difference between the production people and the on-air people. There's also the women aspect to this, which is important when you think about Nikki and also Emma.
So I was surprised that Brooke wasn't the one that was shirty about Nikki, because it kind of felt like she was more of a threat to Brooke. But I guess Brooke's character is a different kind of character.
I think Brooke is someone who very much understands the game, and she knows what she wants, and she knows that she's going to have to deal with obstacles like this. And a bit later in the episode, she does actually deal with it, or so she thinks.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, again, it comes to this overarching thing of begrudgingly accepting the status quo about not rocking the boat.
Yeah.
And we know that she's given some good advice to Emma in this particular bit, and we assume that when later on that she's giving some good advice to Nikki, but it ends up backfiring on her.
Well, I will say that the first advice that Brooke did give to Emma was pretty damn good. Talking about from experience, it's very strong, very, very truthful.
Yeah, the whole thing about Yana, she's only got 10 years, that whole tick, tick, tick stuff.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I don't know whether it's because since we recorded our last episode, we had International Women's Day, because we did have a couple of media-based stories which kind of came out of that. We had Jessica Rowe claiming that a boss at Channel 10 wouldn't let her open the news bulletins because her co-anchor is a man and she's a woman. And then we had Lisa Miller on ABC News Breakfast getting all of these obnoxious comments because of a skirt she wore, and then having articles written about that which just amplified the abuse.
Awful clickbait.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, I think sort of, especially tying into the gender divide, it sort of seems like everybody is, they accept the status quo. They don't like it. They have rants about it, as we saw Emma have and Brian accept Emma to have, but they don't really do anything to change.
I think that's sort of the difference as well between doing a sitcom and perhaps doing a movie, because I think if you were doing a one-off about this, you would have management be a lot more sleazy. But because these are sort of recurring characters that have to come back in the next few weeks, and you don't want people to be throwing their bovril at the television whenever they see them, you've kind of got to go, oh, look, management, they're blokey, but they're not sort of openly leering at her. They kind of dial it down a little bit just for the sake of, being able to keep doing the show. Because realistically, this kind of, as you've just said, this sort of stuff is not something that you could really come back from if you were doing it truthfully. If you were saying, the management wanted this hot chick on the show and, can we get her in a sexy outfit? You don't want to watch that the next week and have those guys doing something else.
Moving on, the next part where we now see Marty trying to execute his story, and he just gets a straight-up refusal from the Mr. Controversial, Mr. Bowen, on tape, because his victim is actually quite happy to talk.
Mr. Bowman, it's Martin Nastasio here from Frontline. Now, why won't you speak to us about the $250,000 that's gone missing from your client's trust funds?
All right, come in.
That's a beautiful line.
And his face.
The look on Marty's face.
It's just like this.
He's like,
shocked,
what?
horrified look.
There's also this sort of weird Stu, the cameraman, seems to have an obsession with McDonald's apple pies.
Yeah.
I think this runs a couple of times in the series from memory.
Interesting. I'm going to keep an eye out for that.
You need to set up a sting for Apple Pie Watch.
Apple
Colin
Pie
Conacher,
Watch.
Apple pie.
But Marty seems to crypt that he's the only guy, he's the only person in Australia who eats those things.
The choco pie.
He's obviously...
Is it actually choco?
No, that's just an urban legend
I don't
type
think they
thing.
can get away with that anymore.
No,
Anyway.
not at all, no.
He's obviously got, strong guts, because the problem with apple pies, as everyone knows, is not that they're horrible, because they're actually quite nice, but they're just too hot. And when you bite into them, they're just molten. And, you always burn your mouth.
I've seen the memes of the molten lava, and they're just putting in. Here they are. This is where they make them.
Yeah, you need to buy it, and you need to sit it in a cool place about half an hour before you attempt it.
No, I want one. You want to do a Macca's run for me? I don't want to go.
Let's
Uber
all
Eats.
go on Deliveroo and get an apple pie right now. Although probably at this time of the morning here in London, I don't think I'll be in any luck. I might get some pancakes.
Now also there is a scene just after the crew recoils from Mr. Bowman being very accommodating. He gets back in the car, and it's not in the show, but it's basically Marty. Stu protesting, that Mr. Bowman said he'd speak to them, and Marty's saying, Christ, he practically invited us in for a beer. He was about to talk. Brian would kill us. And then tries to change the subject by saying, turn that up, Willie. I love this song, while they're in the car. I understand why it wasn't filmed, because it wasn't really necessary to the plot. But it's this sort of weird thing, like it's Marty trying to deny the reality.
Well, I think the idea, I'm guessing, just is that they already have the story worked out. If the lawyer has a good, excuse for what he's done, that just makes things more complicated. And they don't want, a story where it's like a lawyer who dudded people has a good reason. Maybe it's not so black and white. It's like, well, that's not our story. We need a story where the sleazy lawyer is made off with their cash.
Back in the office, there's awkward conversations that Mike is having with Nikki, getting a bit of the brush off. Poor Nikki. And more revealing that Marty's story keeps backfiring because while they're trying to escape, and Mr. Bowen's going, no, come in, seriously, I can tell you everything. And then they're acting all resistant, but it all looks good on tape, doesn't it? Especially when they go into the production studio later on and take everything out of context.
Yeah, they basically reverse the footage so it looks like he slammed the door in their faces as opposed to open it welcomingly. So, yeah.
And that was a good introduction for journalism students and people watching the show about how things can be manipulated like that.
Well, that's kind of the lasting legacy of Frontline, is sort of not so much the jokes and that, it's as it was that they lifted the lid on the various tricks of these shows and how they manipulated things to come up with, stories.
It's just like editing podcasts where things can get manipulated after.
Yes, we can make me sound 20% funnier.
It's not a miracle worker.
It's just got that little slider on the mixing desk where he pushes it up, funny.
Just introduce a bit of wacky music, kind of every time you say something.
But that's the thing as well. I mean, I don't know. I assume people today are much more media literate, and sort of once you put together your own series of TikTok videos, you kind of know how the tricks work. But back then there was sort of this idea of trust in what you were seeing. And, Mike Moore is kind of a symbol of that, as this sort of gormless journalist who was constantly going, oh, but that's not, journalistic ethics. Whereas these days, ethics? No.
Oh, well.
You found it.
That's what I'm talking about.
I don't know that people are much wiser about the media, because all these people who just kind of credulously accept any old crap that's put on Facebook, they'll go, all the mainstream media, boo, boo, and then they'll just eat up any bollocks they read on social media,
That was written by AI.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think we've probably got less an ability to spot the fake these days, but anyway.
Speaking of fakes, Jan and Brian are having an argument about having Nikki on the show, the fake reporter, and here's a bit here.
I think in Nikki's case, being so attractive, we really will need to push the credibility angle, Brian.
Jan, this girl is a high-profile sports star. This is not Rachel Friend from Neighbours popping up on a current affair.
And I do have a clip of the Rachel Friend popping up on a current affair.
To help compile a guide to the best bargains. And Rachel Friend's report also includes some advice on how to avoid costly mistakes.
Just bear with me another minute, please.
The great Aussie dream is still alive in the minds of most. But these days, buying into the dream is fraught with danger. Whether you can afford to get a slice of the housing market depends very much on where you live. Across the country, prices vary dramatically. The median price for a standard 3-bedroom home ranges from $110,000 in Hobart through to $260,000 in Sydney.
Oh, those were the days, weren't they?
Jeez.
I just wanted to get to that part.
That's a bargain.
So is that why they mention her, or is it, did you just find Rachel Friend?
Oh, yeah, it's a story that Rachel Friend did a story on it in a current affair back in 1990.
Like, just from that audio clip,
something.
she actually sounds kind of credible. Like, you know, she sounds like a reporter, and that's probably because she's an actress, and so she can pretend to be a reporter perfectly credibly. Whereas, you know, Nikki Burke is
just
an
like
athlete.
these people are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, but
I think
she's not the only one from Neighbours who's gone from acting to journalism, and another one was Rebecca Ritters, who was Hannah Martin in Neighbours. So she's now a TV journalist and host and stuff in somewhere overseas in Germany or something like that. Anyway, look that up. Yeah, that's honestly the truth.
Back then, there was still sort of the idea that the people on television were journalists in the old-fashioned, you know, I can find a story and I'll get the interview sort of sense. Whereas, you know, as Frontline points out repeatedly, that's just not how it works. You have a bunch of backroom people who do all the work, and your job is to go out there and, you know, perhaps conduct the interviews and speak for the voiceovers. That's kind of, it's two separate jobs. There's no reason why Rachel Friend can't do the second job. It's just that people expected her to be able to do the first one as well.
So, yeah, we have Jan and Brian trying to sell Nikki Burke to the general public, as it were. And this does seem very similar to a scene in the Desert Angel episode where they're talking about, you know, like if you went to an op shop, that meant you were community minded. So, like they're looking at, you know, like, well, journalistic experience. Well, she wrote for a school newspaper, or you know, she went to the Commonwealth Games. Okay, well that means that she's travelled to all the hot spots. And you know, don't mention the boyfriend. We want her to be.
We want every man in
available.
Australia to think he's in with a chance, and Brian included, I assume.
It's this weird sort of over-egging of the pudding, so to speak.
Isn't it just how everyone puts their resumes together now, though?
Yeah, it's LinkedIn. It's just you write any old stuff, put it on there.
There was one other thing that Brian said to Jan, which was, remember when you were at Channel 9 and you said Ian McFadden was the ideal host for Cluedo because he once studied criminology? Which cracks Jan right up.
Did you actually go on Wikipedia and look up whether Ian McFadden did study criminology? Because I have to confess I haven't.
Just because I've been to his house.
If that's
Yeah,
true or
just
not.
because you've been to his house doesn't mean I know.
I'm gonna do this right now. I'm gonna look this up right now.
I just assumed it meant he'd committed some crimes.
Well, that's true.
Crimes
for
against
sure.
comedy.
Against
No,
comedy.
yes.
Well,
basically this, like, it doesn't seem like it's like I can't say whether it's true or not, but it certainly seems plausible.
There is nothing on Wikipedia that says this.
He did play a part as a detective in Prisoner.
Maybe that's
Well,
it.
there you go.
All right, so we see the edited result of Marty's story being out of context, and then Jane gets a gift after an interview with Mr. James Packer, while Mike runs to work in a certain uniform or certain clothing.
Yeah, he rides to work on a bike with some lycra gear. He also turns up at some point wearing tennis gear, although that's a bit later, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah, but he does, then he runs to work, and he's got, like, sort of, like, bike shorts on, but also, like, another pair of shorts over the top, and then he's got a singlet, and he looks pretty ridiculous.
A sweaty singlet.
So he looks pretty stupid,
Basically
yeah.
looking like he's never run before.
Yeah.
Before his previous run.
Yeah.
Station manager Ian and Brian are playing around the golf, and they talk about clip shows, especially one around Ray Martin's good sorts, top blokes, and
dickheads and has-beens.
That great bit from The Late Show.
Yeah.
One of my favourite sketches, yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to insert that bit there and take the other bit out, and no one's going to have any idea what the hell we're talking about. Now, if you really want to hear what was actually said there, go to the end of the episode. It may or may not be a blooper.
They won't come back.
And then you can just do a spin-off called Tony's Sarcastic Comment, which would be about 80% of what I say.
There was one line at the golf course which I thought was very typical of management, perhaps male management. And that was Farmer asking Brian, has she got legs? And Brian replying, up to her armpits.
This is...
Although mind you,
like, no, I meant, will she last?
Well, I was going to say it's slightly lower, but actually, anatomically speaking, it's slightly higher. In the script, it's up to her neck. The neck's slightly higher than the armpits, isn't it?
That would be kind of awkward to walk around. If you don't have a torso. I mean, how did she make it to the Olympics, for goodness sake?
Well, she's a runner, so I guess that's all you need. You don't need a head or a body.
But yeah, you could imagine that it's quite something that to upper management men, white men, would say.
She would have been good at hurdles, so insteed of just...
Oh, yeah. Or the high
just
jump,
stepping
I suppose.
over.
Doing the scissor jump rather than the flop. Fosbury flop. No. This is a good segue. Matt, I was just saying... I found my old diary from when I did my internship at a newspaper back in the 90s. And obviously I was one of the only females there in the newsroom, so I'll just read a little bit about it because I was very upset. This is when I was very upset that I had my article kind of hacked to bits by a senior editor, which is, it happens. That's what happens, and I learnt the hard way. And I was just very upset about it. And I was like, I continue. I shall read. Tomorrow is another day, as the saying goes, and I'm hoping it'll be a better one, but the values this particular newspaper has are old-fashioned and patriarchal and discriminatory, not only for young people, but for us females. I mean, who turns up at the news conference, all fat and or balding and or over 50, and pretentiously dick-headed males? Not a single female in the house to be seen. Why is this? And one of the acting chief editors, I mean, what the hell? Did he say what I just think he said? Someone mentioned a young journalist who had a story, and he said, oh, that's so-and-so. I don't remember her name. They're all the same young, naive female journalists, aren't they? And I was just standing next to him at the time. So he turned to me and said, oh, what a sexist thing for me to have said. Bastards, all of them. Pig-headed males. I'm quoting my friend Anne here. They have absolutely no concern for us newbies. Well, we all have to start at the bottom, but there's no need to gloat your ass off once you're up at the top there, is there? Is this what us future journalists have to be exposed to when the future rolls past us? Being introduced beyond the facade of journalistic ethics has been an eye-opener this year. If it weren't for the experience of being able to go out into the real world, then I would only be hearing about these horror stories in textbooks and on Frontline. There's my reference there. I actually went on a bit of a rant for several pages there, which I won't go into, but the next day I was like, they did edit my article to sound quite good.
I reckon a lot of women who've worked in journalism could definitely relate to that. I have to say that even I, who have never had a career in journalism, can relate to aspects of that, just dealing with sort of older blokes in the office being sort of patronising and dismissive of anyone female. So yeah, that's very, very relatable indeed.
Oh, look, they're also just patronising and dismissive of anyone male if they were younger. I don't know. Journalism is an unpleasant road to travel, and I think for a lot of people, by the time they get to that sort of level, the only benefit left is being unpleasant to underlings.
Oh, I've got no comment for that one.
Yeah, me either, and I mean that's just more because I'm not female, really. I mean, again, it's sort of it seems to be showing that whole overarching thing of it shouldn't be this way, but it's the status quo.
Yeah,
which I mean, it
and
does
Frontline
sound
taught me that.
Yeah.
So Frontline taught us all a lesson and helped us be prepared for what was to come as we went out into the world, regardless of the career.
Because it certainly does sound a lot like the next scene, which is Mike and Emma talking about Nikki, and like Mike trying to calm Emma down, saying that they both know Nikki was hired for her looks, but they have to accept that.
And yet Mike is going for the looks.
Well, yeah, as Emma says, it's so obvious you're keen on her.
He's like, no, but I support you. It's like, yeah.
It's odd.
Yeah, very odd. It's one or the other, Mike. But after Brooke's poo sculpture, well, it was a poo sculpture, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a bloke out in the country who makes sculptures out of poo, and they send Brooke down there to interview him, and she doesn't actually manage to find this guy. So she has to...
shot through.
Yeah, he shot through. So, she has to find some other local characters because they've driven 3 hours and she's got to find some kind of story. So we get treated to a series of extremely piss-weak yokel characters doing their rubbish kind of skills. There's a whip cracker who crack a whip. He's quite funny.
Yeah, they just have to keep filming him until he gets it.
Yeah, it's the vibe of the thing, you know. It's
He did it
that
in the
exact
first
line,
go.
isn't it? It's like the when it's the humidity. It's like, oh, it's the vibe of the thing. It's like, you know, yeah.
It would be a bunch of characters and larrikins and good sorts and all that was very something that a certain someone would absolutely love.
All Aussie adventures, time to hit the road.
It's definitely a strain in Working Dogs humour, isn't it? Of just taking the piss out of Outback characters, zany Outback figures who are a bit shit.
I was thinking of what man would spend $2 million creating this vibe.
Yeah.
Like Glenn
Oh,
Rowan.
there was another Late Show sketch of very early on in Series 1, I'd like to say. I'm only going by memory here, but yeah, basically, yeah, all of these typical Outback larrikin characters who have the sky as their blanket and come, pre-equipped with, half a dozen anecdotes.
Deeply boring anecdotes as well.
The thing that kind of struck me with this bit is I kept trying to think, how does this relate to the main story that they've kind of sent Brooke out on this rubbish job? And yet it's sort of like, I want to, Emma's saying, I want to be on camera, why won't you give me a shot? And it's like, this doesn't seem like a job you would be knocking down a door to get, driving 3 hours to talk about a pile of poo.
Well, there's the
it's a
bit
bit of a fall from grace from interviewing James.
Well,
Packer.
exactly, and she points this out. It's again, this is how it really is. One day you're doing James Packer, the next day you got to interview a local shit sculptor. So that's the job.
Sure.
That's how it is.
After Brian tries to train Nikki doing pieces to camera with disastrous results, Brooke does wrap up her stories.
And finally, this is the Major Mitchell cockatoo. How was that?
That was fantastic, great, terrific, thanks. Did you get that?
No.
Good. Well, it's been a marvellous afternoon. Let's just recap, shall we? The whipcracker, spellbinding. The bush balladeer, could have listened to him for hours. Not forgetting the incredibly talented woman who could play the recorder through her nose.
Very attractive.
I'll go to walk the award for this.
Oh, you cut out the best line from Stu that comes straight after. Don't forget the bloke who reckons Blue Heelers was based on him.
Oh, yeah.
Which, considering that's the sleepy township of Mount Thomas, makes me wonder what exactly he's done.
That's where Channel 9 chimes in again, stealing the story of the shit sculptor.
Oh, dare I say it, they might be shit stirring.
The sculptures look pretty good.
I was trying to work out, because Channel 9, when they drive past, they've actually got a shit sculptor in the back of their car. I'm trying to work out who it's a sculpture of, and I thought, is this meant to be Ray Martin or something? I couldn't work it out. Anyway,
well, see,
write in if you know.
It's in the script, but it's not on the screen. That they sort of say that it's like sheep sculptures made out of sheep poo and cow sculptures made out of cow poo.
But this is a human. This is a human head, though.
You don't mean that it was made out of?
Well, it could be, I suppose. But that's. I mean,
It is the country.
if you're going to give a present to Channel 9, get them a load of feces.
Yeah, I do wonder what they would have done with that
Passive-aggressive
when they
gift.
got back to Richmond.
Put it on the garden, possibly. I don't know.
Give it to Don Burke.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
He deserves it.
Anyway, Brooke does go back to the office and gives Nikki some advice back in the office bathroom. So after, she palms off the advice to Emma, Nikki cops it as well. Great advice again. Go out, cut your teeth, do what you need to do and so forth, or got to stick to what you're good at, and that is sport. Yeah, sports person. Yeah. So,
but then Brooke says that her Olympics is 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it means travel, getting your own producer. They write all your questions. They set it all up for you.
So Brooke tells her what her dream is and her vision, and which sets something up for later. But Jeff is upset that his documentary gets dropped. Oh, what a shame. And Brooke tells Emma that Nikki is moving on and she won't be a problem anymore. Gee, I wonder.
Can I just point something out here about the scene with Mike and Jeff? Now, I noticed that Mike is actually wearing a Hanes wind cheater. And, of course, anyone who remembers the brands will remember this.
We got our Hanes all over the country. We got our Hanes all over the world. We got our Hanes all over this boy and boy. We got our Hanes all over this girl. You listen to their story. True colors come shining through. Can't wait, can't wait, can't wait, can't wait till we get our Hanes on you.
Yeah, that's James Blundell singing the Hanes commercial jingle. And something...
Yeah.
Was he on a motorbike in that?
Yeah.
Is he riding a motorbike and then everyone's like, he's not wearing a helmet?
Yeah, that was quite controversial at the time,
Health
wasn't
and
it?
safety.
He wasn't wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, when I saw that Hanes wind cheater, I was just triggered and remembered that ad. So I thought...
We got our Hanes
Oh, no more.
Yeah. So, sorry, everyone. This is now your new earworm. Enjoy!
We got our Hanes all over the country.
You just wanted to...
We got our Hanes all
Cut it out.
Commercial.
Never play that again.
Well, it's better that you got James Blundell doing Hanes in that same era. I think it might have been the year before or around that same time period. You also had Lee Kernaghan doing the
McDonald's
ad, the McBeef steak. So I won't play that.
Please don't.
I guess, no, I won't. But hey, it's better than 4.5 minutes of shit.
We've got some cut lines here. If you've ever wanted to know what the full lyrics of the Leadership Lullaby are, because we only get the last line actually, it goes like this. Oh dear, who will become our chief? Hewson, Bronny or Peter Reith? The Liberals will find they get no relief till Johnny decides who's boss. That's the lyrics. Now, smell that satire there.
Delicious satire.
John Clark and Brian Dora quaking in their boots at that one.
There's also a tiny change to the title. In the script, it's the Leadership Limbo, but on screen, it's the Leadership Lullaby. And then sort of wrapping everything up, we see another grab of the lovable country larrikins, and another look at Gary Sweet. A lot more Gary Sweet than Brooke Vandenberg in the clip there. So.
Most people I know think that I'm
No, I've just forgotten about that. And now
Go
you've
back
brought it
to
up
James
again.
Blundell, I think. No, don't do that.
Yeah, I'd probably prefer that one.
However, we've kind of missed the key point here, and that is that we suddenly get the announcement that Nikki doesn't want to do the show.
Yes, Brian says in the script, again, it's in the script but it's not on screen, that she doesn't want to do Frontline, quote, some crap about the Olympics, unquote.
And then we discover that, or Brooke discovers that her dream job working for 60 Minutes is completely destroyed by Nikki taking her spot. And they discover that with a 60 Minutes promo.
Yeah, it's a great little sort of subversion there, because Brooke thinks that she's done the right thing in persuading Nikki not to do Frontline by talking about 60 Minutes. But basically, Brooke's going, yeah, not like that.
Yeah.
Not like don't replace your dream with my dream.
I have to say that Nikki's played this really well, hasn't she? You know, because it's hard to tell whether she was naive or whether she was just playing it naive throughout this whole episode. You know, because there's absolutely zero hint that she's going to take this 60 Minutes job, and then suddenly she's just completely screwed Brooke over.
Well, yeah, because they sort of, when they're talking on the golf course and they say, you know, she's being managed by her coach, there's sort of no, it's not like she's got some, you know, Sven Garley in the background. Yeah. I mean, really, that's all you need to do with Frontline. You just go, oh, she's teamed up with Harriet Miller. And everyone knows what that means.
The ticket seller.
Sort of, yeah. It's sort of this whole kind of idea that, anyone who seems naive is just bunging on an act and everyone's really a player. And the poor staff of Frontline are once again left behind by just not being quite as devious as everyone else.
Well, the end credits, I don't know if you got much on this, Daniel, but I did some minor research.
I will defer to your research because I don't really have anything.
That's all right. Well, Nikki was played by Rachel Davey, and when I try to do a deep dive, Rachel Davey has changed name to Rachel Kennedy and only starred in 2 other things. So that was really it. But yeah, there is another Rachel Davey out there, but she's a voice actor based in the US. This person is Rachel Kennedy, a totally different person.
And certainly no relation to Gerard Kennedy, I'm assuming.
Or Jane Kennedy,
yep.
Maybe. Yeah. The Kennedys. Well, there you go. There you go. So that wraps up Frontline, Season 1, Episode 4, and the Champagne Comedy Podcast, Episode 44. Jeez, we're getting on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Middle-aged.
Well then, that wraps everything up. And so feel free to reach out to us if you want to share any news or stories or little bits and pieces. Email champagnelateshow@gmail.com, Twitter @TLSChampagne, website champagnecomedy.com when it decides to work. And also there's I'm sorry, Kim. It's not your fault.
That's all right.
That's the server. Facebook, The Late Show page. And also make sure you subscribe to Working Dog's YouTube channel as well. As we mentioned earlier, they're releasing clips of their archives, including little extra bits of The Late Show. So we don't have anything to do with that, but just will give you a plug on that. Or search for the Champagne Comedy Podcast group on Facebook. It's on private, but answer the 3 questions and you're in. So as always, thank you very much, Alison, Daniel, Kim, and Tony for coming on the show and dealing with all the crap, as well as thanking you, the listener, for downloading and listening. Also, give us a decent star rating. I can't really tell you what to do, but
That's 5 stars. 5 stars.
Okay. See, Alison can, but I can't. If you do that, will be greatly appreciated. And thanks so much for listening and downloading and subscribing. So I'm Matt, and thank you for listening. Catch you in the next episode. See ya.
Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to the Champagne Comedy Podcast, created by fans for the fans. For more information on this podcast, please visit champagnecomedy.com. Produced by Matt Fulton Productions, mattfulton.com.au.
Dickheads and has-beens.
As well
Was that
as...
a clip from Full Frontal by any chance?
No,
that
Late
was
Show.
Late Show.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, what?
Can't believe I
We cut that bit out, weren't we?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think.
You need to watch the series from start to finish.
I've already done that.
As soon as
I
we
can't
finish this
remember
podcast.
everything.
That's what Ross Warnicki used to say.
Season 1, Episode 18 of The Late Show.
And he's not reading that either, are you?
Yeah, you knew that off by heart.
Yeah, I knew it off by heart, yeah.
Maybe we just need to listen to our own podcast.
That
again.
was your border.
It was my border. I mean, if you're a nice editor, you could cut it out to preserve my credibility.
I will.
Credibility.
Yeah.